So I'll just kind of document this just in case it can help somebody. The main ram that goes along here, there's a bolt inside the frame that screws on and secures the back side of this ram so it can push and pull for the slide to come in and out. Well, we had noticed over a couple of months that the curbside slide was sticking out just half an inch or something like that. Kind of unusual, not overly concerned. Checked everything here, everything looked secured. All the spacings hadn't changed, and then we went to put the slide out, and the slide only went out a few inches and then it stopped. We couldn't figure out what's going on. Well, we kind of pushed a little bit and so forth, and it kind of moved, and we can't get into the bedroom or the bathroom without the curbside slide being out. So we pushed it out enough to where we could get in, but it came to a stop about halfway out. I'm thinking maybe it's a solenoid or something like that on the valves and so forth. Once we got set up, got underneath here, I had to drop the Coroplast underneath here and follow the ram. Well, before I got underneath there, I noticed this was kind of bumped up against this. That's not good. Maybe I bent something, maybe something broke. Got in there and found out that the back of the nut that holds the whole ram to the inside of the frame had fallen off and fallen down. When we had tried to use the ram to go in and out, this portion right here fully extended. When it fully extended, it goes about 14, maybe 16 inches further than it normally does. And what it does is there's a hose, hydraulic hose, and what it did is it stretched it out to where this plastic covering was like a rubber band that's been stretched out, elongated, and it broke right there. Also, as I traced all the way through, I found a little cut in this little portion up in here. So bottom line is the hydraulic hose has got to be replaced. So then comes the next dilemma. Replacing the hose, it's a pain in the butt, but it's not hard. But how long do you need that hose to be? Well, the only way to really do that is to take the hose off and take it to a hydraulic shop. They can make it up in a few minutes. It's not very complicated for them, but you got to make sure it's the right length. So, I mean, I'm sure there's other ways to figure out lengths and so forth, but the easiest way is to take it off, take it to the hose shop, have them fabricate it, and then reverse putting the thing in. So what I've got to do is I've got to disconnect the red hose. The black hose is fine. That's on the front portion here. And disconnect from the ram, and then follow it all the way through underneath to the front where it connects to a valve. Take that off and then pull it all the way through. Then take that to the shop. My idea is to tie off one end with some parachute cord so I actually trace the exact same location to where it is wound through, and then I'll just pull it back up through. But in order for me to do that, I got to drop this Coroplast, and then I got a drop frame, the 376 Grand Design. I've got to drop this Coroplast. In order for me to get underneath there, I've got to raise the rig up. That brings another dilemma. Now that I'm opening up the hydraulics, I don't know if there's a valve that controls just the slides and so forth. So I've got to make sure it's propped up with a bottle jack to make sure it doesn't drop on me while I'm underneath pulling everything. But I'm going to pull the Coroplast first before I disconnect the hose, and I'm going to raise this up so I got plenty of room. But I'll try to show you the inner workings. Talked to a couple of Grand Design techs. The nut falling off the back of this ram, it is not a usual thing. Once those things go on, they're on. But there's not a double nut system. There's not a lock washer on the back of it or whatever. So my idea is, while I'm up in there, I'm just going to put a small little dab of Loctite on the back of that nut, and I probably will do it to the other ram, because there's a ram on this side and then there's a ram on the other side that's more up on the other side on this portion up here. I've turned off the valves to both of the hydraulic slides. So this is the valve that's on the back of the propane tank, and this is the one that controls the curbside. So I got to disconnect up here through my generator front bay, and then follow this line right here all the way down through along the frame. So again, it's just the threading and knowing the proper length. And this is your main valves, but this valve right here goes around and comes in here. So I don't know, once I disconnect that, if that's going to have any effect on the leveling legs with a hydraulic drop. So I'll block it up with my bottle jacks and stabilize at least the front, that if it drops, it won't drop off on top of me. But this is all preparation for doing the swap. But getting the line out, should be disconnecting up here at the top. This one here on the right, or the left, excuse me, and then pulling that down through. And what I'll do is I'll take some parachute cord and tie it to the end of this as I pull it down through, so I can make sure that, one, I go the same route, and maybe make it easier to kind of pull it up through this portion, because I don't know what it looks like down through there in the lower portion of the front of the rig. First, got to drop the spare tire. After dropping the spare tire, I'll drop this front flap first, disconnecting all the bolts up to the front of the axle. Push this spare tire off to the side so it doesn't get in my way. This portion of the Corplast will drop from the front, and then I'll get underneath this and just do the left, or the curb side portion, drop it down this way so I can get up into this area here where the lines run all the way up to the front. I don't know what it looks like in there, but we'll see. So there's the back side of the ram. It goes all the way up, and you can see that's the nut that came off that caused my dilemma. Now, if you follow this, you'll see right here. Well, it's hard to see. Right there, you can see where it's kind of stretched the outer rubber coating, and it goes out, over, under. This is where I got my little leak, put some hose clamps on it to help, and it goes all the way up through there. So far, it's just a pain in the neck. It's nothing hard. It's just getting in here. Had to pull out that insulation, and so far, so good. So it's not as bad as I thought it would be. The line right there goes through, and this is the line. You can see I'm moving it. Goes all the way up through. Sorry for the jiggly, but I'm laying on my back. And goes all the way up through here. So I should be able to easily slide this out. The routing isn't bad at all. Just goes right up along the frame, and I only had to drop one side of the front Corplast. Alright, so this is the fitting that I'm taking off right there. And what you use for that is you use a 9/16 to hold the L fitting, whatever you want to call it, and then a 7/16 will take off the actual fitting, or better yet, reverse that. The 7/16 holds the L fitting, and then the 9/16 takes the actual hose off. I'm going to run that down. Got my parachute cord to tie to the end just to make sure, but I don't think it's that bad of a routing. I didn't have to raise the rig, didn't do anything special. I just dropped that one side, blocked up, got my bottle jacks and everything under the front just in case the pressure is taken off. The hose here makes the rig drop. I'm not going to be underneath it when I take this off. I'll open up that fitting just a little bit, kind of take the pressure off it, and then disconnect it, and then I'll go back underneath there and do the same thing on the ram. Then I'll take that off and take it to the hydraulic hose place. They said they can do it up in a few minutes. So I've cracked the hose at both ends, and it's dripping a little bit at the valve, but this is the lowest point, so I expect this to drip for a little bit. Just taking the pressure off the hose. I'll let it sit there for a few seconds, and for maybe a minute or so, and I'll disconnect that, kind of tie up a rag at the end of it, and then kind of thread it through to make sure. I'll also make sure that the parachute cord is tied to the end of it, but I'm not foreseeing a big routing problem. It's pretty simple. So I got the new hose, 18 feet. This is some sturdy stuff. It's definitely improvement over the stock, but it comes at a cost. For 18 feet, it cost about $72. But definitely sturdier, and it only took them about 5 minutes to make it up. So it's a whole lot simpler to take it to the shop with the hose you need to replace than trying to figure out how long you need it to and then go in and replace it. So now I'll just hopefully put this in and be done. Okay, everything's in. Ran it slides in and out a couple times, purged the air out of there, and no leaks. So now it's just a matter of putting it all back together. Put my foam board back up after stuffing the insulation back in there. Okay, let me just kind of summarize what I kind of figured out. Number one, the routing of the hydraulic lines is not that difficult. Parachute cord wasn't necessary. I started from inside the generator bay, just kind of pushed it down. Once I got it through, reached up and just kind of threaded it back, and then connected up to the ramrod and tightened that down, and then went up into the generator bay, tightened that down, and ran the slides in out a couple times. There was a couple pauses there as pushing the air out of the lines, but now if I have to replace any the leveling pads or whatever, tire blowout or whatever, the biggest problem is figuring out the length. But you just got to disconnect, drop your coroplast. If you haven't dropped your coroplast, you'd be surprised what's up in there. I definitely have done some improvements on adding insulation and the 1-inch foam board along the bottoms and so forth. That really helped, especially in the big Texas freeze out last winter. But my front has got a big gap. All that insulation that's right in there, that's only about 3 inches. I got a bunch of leftover insulation I'm going to stuff up in there. That'll be part of my winter project, and I'll put that 1-inch foam board all across the rest of the bottom. But all in all, it wasn't that bad. The rig didn't move, so the valve for the, at least for the hydraulic slides. By me turning those off or whatever, there wasn't enough pressure on it. I don't know. But I didn't take any chances and crawl underneath there, making sure that I didn't put myself in a compromised position. But all in all, it's really not that hard. The hardest part is laying on your back, getting up in the insulation, dropping your coroplast, and then putting it all back together. And I've dropped the coroplast 3 or 4 times, and I've gotten pretty used to how the easy ways to put it up and go from there. But I hope this helps somebody, because I had a lot of questions on lengths of the hoses and so forth, and I just kind of muddled through it. And it's really not that hard. On a scale of 1 to 10 on difficulty, maybe a 3, maybe a 4. And that's only because of the awkwardness of where you're laying and so forth. Hope this helps. Thanks.